Welcome back, guys, to another episode of PPK Perspectives. I'm very excited about today's episode. I'm rocking the Draco apparel hat. We had Draco on a few episodes ago, and today we got another legendary Catholic brand out there. There's not too many of them. I already had Saint Wave. I had Draco apparel. It only left one more. I got the man behind Saints Reserve. We're going to show some pictures and everything about his brand. All that stuff will be linked below. But Chris Ibrahim, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm so excited to be here. Honestly, your brand, what you're trying to do is exactly what I'm trying to do. Just kind of get the faith out to like kind of target that younger generation who, we see these days they're kind of struggling, they're all on TikTok. They're all, have all these other platforms they're accessing that are showing them, all this, bad data that is kind of leading them away from the faith. So the fact that you have your own thing you're doing to kind of like fire up these kids and all that, man, it's a blessing, man. It's beautiful. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate it, man. It's a match made in heaven here, I think, on this podcast, finding dudes like you. And we talked a little bit before the show, and we realized that we have some 209 connections and a connection with Father Peter. So Father Peter, if you're watching this, dude, shout out to you. We love you, man.
I'm gonna make sure he watches it. I'm gonna send him the link of the podcast.
Yeah, we got to bother him with it, and then Father Peter, if you're watching this, you're coming on soon too. So don't try to get away from that one. All right, Chris. Let's just start out. Oh, let's do a little icebreaker. Okay, so actually, you did tell me that you were into video games a little bit as a developer, designer, and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. I already asked this question. I've been trying my best, man. I've been trying my best to ask new questions for each guest, but some questions are just too good. All right, so I asked my friend Kyle. I said, let's throw the Saints in Street Fighter, okay? And now, some people like Pio and these other, Pio's a good answer, obviously. You got St. Joseph Cupertino who could fly, a little levitation action. Yeah. So we're gonna act like the Saints are in Street Fighter. Who's your fighter and why? Why are you choosing them?
You have to do Saint Joan of Arc. I think Saint Joan of Arc is 100% the right choice here, because she was called by God. She had visions by Saint Michael, literally, of she was called to lead France to win this war. And, she led a whole army at only like 17, 18 years old. She led the whole army. She still had compassion for her victims. I don't know if you knew this about St. Joan of Arc, but she would literally like make sure everyone in her army would go to confession, right before they went out to battle. And then she would also, like, fallen soldiers on the other side, she would tend to these soldiers. And like, she had so much love in her heart, but she was still like, I trust her with any fight.
Wow. I mean, what an answer, man. What an answer. That's a good one. I like that a lot. That's under the radar for me, I didn't really, but then again, I guess I wasn't really considering too many female, street fighters, I guess, in my mind. But that's a good answer.
She's got a horse. She's got her sword. No, I think I would.
That's a hard one to stop, dude. That's a hard one to stop.
I think I would choose her. Yeah. She's got God on her side too.
Exactly. So. Yeah. Seriously. Okay. All right, dude. Let's get into your story. Let's talk about, you can go as deep as you want, as far in the beginning as you want, sort of like your childhood upbringing, all that kind of stuff, towards really just how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up just loving technology and loving computers. My dad had a computer business up in Stockton, and we could not even afford a babysitter. So when I was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, I would just be at his store, and, he'd have these people coming in trying to sell him books. And then he'd just buy one book. He'd be like, here, Chris, read this book. And it's, on like a programming language, like C++ or some one of those old school programming languages. So I was just so bored, and my dad didn't have any games at his shop or anything. So I would just like learn how to code and learn how to print like, hello world on the command prompt and all of that. And I got I loved it. Like, I just loved programming. And then also in my youth, I probably played way too many video games than I should have. So I started just like playing video games, and then obviously you get your parents telling you, oh, stop playing video games, you're wasting your time, and all that. And it's just the constant nagging on me kind of transitioned me to, I love programming and I love, video games. Like, why don't I try developing some video games? So then I started getting into video game development, and the day I got into video game development was probably the last time I ever played a video game seriously. Because I just started I love playing video games. I love making them. And then, so I started I was like the one guy to do everything for a video game. I would do the art for a video game. I would do the programming for a video game. And that's kind of what got me into the artwork that I do for Saints Reserve. So I don't know if you've seen the designs, like a lot of them kind of resemble, like, it's kind of like video game arty. It's kind of bright colors, kind of, I tell the story in a picture, and I just want to make it appealing, just kind of like how, like, the title, like the cover of a video game looks. People know what the game is from the little, the case of the game. So I always knew that I loved the faith. My parents were devout Catholics. They'd always take us to church on Sundays, and growing up, it was just honestly, I didn't really understand it. It's just like a thing. Oh, we're going to church today. Oh, we're going to church. And it wasn't until I graduated high school and I became a youth group leader. Father Simon called me. I don't know if you know Father Simon. Yeah. So he's at our church over here. Father Simon called me after retreat, and he said, Chris, there's an opportunity to lead these kids. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, whatever. Didn't think too much of it. And I started leading the kids, and I fell in love with that. From that moment, it didn't feel like work to me. I was always excited to go to these youth groups and teach them about the faith, teach them about the gospel. And I've been doing that ever since. I'm still a youth group leader today. And one thing I learned and noticed from that is, we get a little rubric that we got to study. This is what we're teaching the kids this week. And I would notice that, they just, when you're reading these Bible passages, especially to the youth, where they get entertainment from all these other places, it's just not that entertaining for them. They're not, I hate to say, but a lot of the youth today is not attracted to, Bible verses, or, they just don't understand it. So then once in a while, maybe it was a feast day of a saint that day, I was teaching the youth, so I would mention a saint, and mention how, the saint actually received the stigmas of Jesus, Saint Joseph of Cupertino, the saint actually floated, and then I'd see the kid's eyes just light up, and I'm like, okay, what is it about saints that, makes them so attractive? And you look at today's society with these Marvel movies and, these, human beings that are able to do, non-human things that's exactly what saints are. You have saints performing miracles nonstop. You had Padre Pio, who knew your sins and knew your mind better than you did, right? So so then I noticed this is a way to bring the youth bring the faith to the youth. So then I just started telling the story about the saints through my designs. I used what I learned in my video game designs to make saints attractive, and I want just kids to feel happy to wear saints, and I want kids to talk about saints how I do. And it's for even now, for me to see the youth wearing shirts with saints on them and not be ashamed to wear them, right? That's my goal of it. So you really that's how this all started. I knew I had a calling to, especially the youth. I knew that I had a calling to get the youth to be more attracted to the faith and love saints. So I started with the Bible verses and stuff, because saints should always be supplementary to the gospel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
of course, the gospel and what Jesus has said is like the most important thing, right? But it's kind of like a door opens for them to enter the faith because they get interested about saints, and then they say,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, he became a saint because he loved Jesus this much and he had this much faith in Jesus," or she, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of like my goal through Saints Reserve and how I started all that.
Well, I mean, yeah, what an awesome story, dude. And there's so much there that I want to dive into. I'm trying to make sure I can sort of, dissect this in the proper way that would flow nicely. But there's so much there that I really love, because I just did a shirt, and I didn't share with you, but sort of like PPK on Instagram now has become a little bit of like a side project, passion project for me, doing clothing. We just did a Saint POT, and it did really well, and I was really happy about that. But it was the same
Good.
similar idea. It was about this. It's about portraying PO in a way that's like common with sort of like graphic rap tees that are going on now. Like there's like a million Instagram brand accounts that are just like popping up Kobe tees and this tee and that tee, and it's Serena Williams is on it, or whoever is like, if someone just retired, they're throwing on Roger Federer or whatever, it's going to happen. So there's so many of that, and it seems like a lot of times we're lacking like creatively as a church sometimes, in terms of like we want to dumb down sometimes like the traditions of our church when we shouldn't, and then in the moments when we should be really creative and we should be experimental maybe, or a little bit more willing to go outside the box, we kind of fail in that aspect. So I think we can mix the two, where it's like, no, don't change anything over here, you know what I mean? Like the mass is the mass, so let's not try to bring anything else like into it. But over here, when we're at, it's really time to show our creativity and tradition and beauty, and then we kind of fail in those aspects. So I think it's so awesome, your story with that. Let's talk a little bit about like just Saints Reserve in general, and sort of like not only your journey through it. Obviously you talked about how it came about, but like what the journey's been like so far, and then also like your creative process. How do you go about like choosing a certain saint and design? Obviously there's particular characteristics tied to a saint. Like I know you did one with Saint Pio fighting the devil, because he was known to physically fight the devil. So those are obviously fun and more, I would say, obvious reasons why you choose that design choice. But do you have a certain, you're in the chapel, whatever it is?
Yeah. So typically how I choose my designs. So I get first of all, I get tons of recommendations in my DMs. Can you do this next? Can you do this next? And I don't try to so much play off that. I like to go with kind of what the flow, like what's the flow of the world right now. Like I released that Saint Joan of Arc design. Like that was my latest design I released, because you hear all this commotion about the war in Ukraine with Russia and everything. And I just wanted people to have faith in God and have someone that people can pray to. But typically how I release a saint design is I'll do a ton of research on the saint. Now, I usually like reading books on saints more than actual, YouTube videos are amazing and great and everything. I love reading books on saints, and I try to get it as accurate as possible, like down to like the detail. Like for example, I have like a Saint Mary Magdalene one I released on Easter, and with her not touching Jesus, because she didn't touch Jesus, and I had Jesus still have the wounds in his resurrected body. Like I just want to put, I just do a lot of research behind my designs and what I want to put out before. And I also want to kind of release saints that are traditional, kind of like how you were saying, just kind of like, here is the saint and this is their picture. And then I also want to do kind of like the play on the saint, like the funny designs, the designs that can attract more people. So like you said, like I'll have Padre Pio fighting the devil in like a boxing glove, or I have Saint Christopher surfing. I have Saint Joseph of Cupertino in an airplane because he's a patron saint of aviation, because he floated. And I have a lot of people pray to him for studying too. So I had books and pencils flying out of the cockpit in that design. So, it's always what I think people need. So, like for example, right now I'm working on a Mother Mary Star of the Sea design. So a lot of, people would pray to, like sailors, people on expeditions would pray to Mother Mary for guidance, through the ocean and stuff. And we just had that hurricane in Florida where the coast literally got covered with water, by the ocean. So now I'm working to release that one next week because it kind of falls in line with current events. So I kind of do a mix of current events and also what's in demand and, what people want.
No, I think that's the best formula. When I was speaking with Draco, one of the big things that we were talking about is intentionality. And I think as Catholics, when we create, we should set the bar for intentionality, because it's like that message that you're trying to portray in the time when it's needed. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about like doing the whole Bible relay, and you just open a page and you're like, wow, that really spoke to me. It's like kind of what you're doing with your clothes, and if someone just came across, and they're on their explore page and they're like, wow, look at the time that we're in and what this speaks to me and how that can elevate somebody. And just their thought process, that doesn't mean they initially have to buy even, but the thought process that you can put across the timeline when you're just continually scrolling, and so it's such a beautiful thing that you're doing with that.
Yeah, even if people can just see the shirt and just read my, read my caption and just understand what it is and send a prayer, because hopefully they could relate what's going on in the world with that. Like that's a win for me, as well.
Yeah.
People talking about the saints,
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. I want to backtrack a little bit. So what did you went to school for like design and all that kind of stuff too?
No, I actually just went to school for, I had two majors. I had math and computer science.
Sheesh.
So that's what I went to school for.
Okay.
I kind of, everything I design, I kind of taught myself just through my, through wanting to do it for video games growing up.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's
no
insane.
art.
That's insane. Yeah, I've been in this process of trying to like sort of build up my skills, and if it's like clothing or just in general, just like social media, because that's a beast in itself too. That's like a full-time job, just trying to make sure you can, what I mean, that you're putting out content and all that kind of stuff. And so I was just curious because obviously what you do, you're super talented in that, and I'm not very talented yet. Maybe we'll get there though. We'll get there one day.
Bro, you'll get there. I don't even think I am. Like I come across other artists who like can draw up something real fast. Literally me, I'll do it like on my iPad and I'll like zoom in. I'll draw a line. I'll zoom out. I'm like, oh man, that line is off. Erase it. Draw another line. If I do by hand, I'm horrible. Like I can't. But
yeah. No,
so
I mean we all got our own gifts and stuff like that, which makes it beautiful. That's why we're a church, and that's why I like doing these podcasts, because you want to see what gifts people have and how they're using them to glorify the kingdom. Okay, so in this journey so far, I know you have some other projects and stuff like that, and we'll get to that. Obviously, you talked a lot about saints and why they're important, and that's a big thing for me recently has been reading just more about the saints' lives, because when you're in this point of no matter whatever you're going through, you can find a saint who has gone through probably something way worse than whatever you did, whether it's like just dryness in faith, right? Or it's just like a hard time. And their response is just, it can be so illuminating. Sometimes it can be hard to dissect just exactly what Jesus is saying in a particular parable, or maybe you don't really have the full context of it because not all of us are Bible scholars. So it'd be difficult to sort of, take all that. But when you can read, here's exactly a diary of a saint, here's exactly what they're going through and like how they're responding towards it, that's super powerful. And so what has sort of kept you grounded, I think, in your faith journey up until this point of, whether it's youth ministry and doing all these different things, there could be a lot of pressure. I know even for me, when I think about doing a podcast and sort of the target that you put on your own back, in James, it says, to the extent of like, be careful if you're teaching, that's a lot of responsibility you're adding on yourself. And, and it can be a lot, and you have to figure out those things. You have to internally be able to say like, okay, what am I doing? Besides not just externally, what am I creating or how am I talking to these people, but what am I doing? So what has that been for you?
Um, this may sound like a cliche answer, but honestly, what keeps me grounded is sticking with the rosary and just praying that every night. You know, if I can't pray at night, I try to plan it out and play it in the day. Because this was said by, who said this? Was said by a saint or a priest. It's it's basically along the lines of, it's either you can't have sin with the rosary. It's either you pray the rosary and you don't sin, or when you stop praying the rosary is when you start sinning, basically. You have those two completely conflict, and it comes from repeated action of praying the rosary every day with that intent of getting better, and with that intent of having, faith in God, that, you're showing your effort and he's going to help you. It's that repeated effort that is what kind of keeps me grounded. A lot of people will they'll do a 9-day novena, which is beautiful. Like that is amazing, doing a 9-day novena, but it almost has kind of, to me, the same merit as going to the gym for 9 days. You know what I'm saying? So I think people, to keep grounded, first it's gonna be discipline. Like you're gonna, in the beginning, you're gonna feel very unmotivated to pray it. You're gonna think you're repeating prayers, repeating Hail Marys. But I encourage you, if anyone is feeling a bit, not grounded to the faith, really start a long streak of discipline of just praying the rosary, even if it's in the beginning based on discipline, and and that'll slowly turn into the love for God. Like, I'm praying this because I want to. We gotta kind of humble ourselves. You have these things you read online too that say, like, oh, you should want to love to pray the rosary. You should want to love to pray the rosary. Shouldn't feel like a chore. But you kind of have to humble yourself, and if it does feel like that, like, just have faith in the day that one day it might not. So really, just praying the rosary consistently has kept me grounded. And like you were saying, like having a brand like this, where now you're kind of like, you're the face of it. So it's like, it's not only your responsibility, it's not only on you to stay holy, but now it's like, maybe I'm not holy, and I won't have that creative initiative to come up with something new. Like, if this is God's will for us, starting a brand like this, starting your brand, then the moment we kind of endure, like, go through mortal sin, is when that his will gets cut from us. So who knows the horrible actions that's even costing us to our soul. Obviously we know that, but also to, like, these brands we have. So I kind of think in that way too, and I've noticed it as well. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the more you're in line with the faith and God and stay in a state of grace, the more creative, at least I've been, and the more motivated I am to do more. Right?
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, kind of those two things, and I just pray the rosary and know that I have the opportunity to save so many souls, and I can't do that unless I work on myself.
Yeah, no, that's beautifully said. And obviously the rosary is one of our greatest gifts that we have. And for those, just to get into that a little bit, maybe for those who try to pray the rosary, but it can be difficult, right? Like, I'm the kind of person where, like, I'll be praying the rosary, and then all of a sudden, like, I don't even know what planet I'm on. I'm thinking about this thing over here, or this, or whatever. I'm thinking about the next clothing drop. Like, as a sort of, and I've been somebody that's been praying the rosary pretty consistently since my freshman year of college. And I don't even think I've gotten to the point fully loving it as I should. And I think a lot of that has to do with my own intention when I'm going into it, is just words that I'm saying, or am I trying to meditate upon something, be it, the mysteries and things like that. And I've always tried to work on that, because I think for so long, and the way that I've always practiced the faith that in which I'm trying to work on is like, I took it as like, it's basketball, right? Like I do things even if I don't feel like doing it. I'm going to do these things that make me better. And a lot of times I can practice my faith in a way that I'm sort of just accomplishing sort of different tasks as opposed to living it. You know what I mean? Like constantly living it, being intentional. And so like, what do you say to maybe, the person that's like, man, I don't disagree anything about the rosary or the power of it, but it's so hard. It's so easy to get distracted. It's so hard to stay in that state. And like, how do we get I don't want to say the most out of the rosary, but how do we really enter in that place,
Yeah, that's tough, because it will take discipline at first, like I was saying. But I also think try to tie it into something that you think you need in your life. Like I think people take for granted how beautiful it is to just sit down and just kind of think about your day and think about the goals that you want. And this is kind of what I tie into my rosary. Like it's even getting very trendy. You see all these things online, like, all you have to do is just manifest 20 minutes, and the universe will give it to you.
Yeah.
And that there's a little bit of truth in that Jesus says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you have the power to move mountains. But do it in terms of the faith. I think just try to have the perception when you pray the rosary that your life, that you have so much faith in God that your life will get better because of this. Your prayers will be answered because of this. One thing that really kind of opened up my eyes and changed the way how I pray, and it might, I'm hoping this can make the rosary more attractive for your listeners and you, is that, so I prayed a 54-day rosary novena, and the first 27 days of that was your petition. So kind of like asking God what you want. And then the last 27 days was thanking God for him giving you your answer to that prayer. And then I thought like how amazing is it that you pray in terms of, almsgiving, like you already thanking God for what he gave you in your prayer, even if it didn't happen yet, And I think that's what Jesus means is, when you have that faith, when like you pray knowing that like you want something to happen in the future, but you pray already thanking God for, him delivering it, it makes prayer so much more powerful. And you see those trendy manifestation videos, they're like, oh, picture yourself, opening up your Lamborghini, like feeling the door, driving in it, and you'll get it. They kind of have it more spot on than kind of what the faith teaches also in a way. Like a lot of what people know of prayer is just asking, right? And you really have to picture God, answering your prayers. And I think that just makes prayers so much more powerful. But you have to truly believe and have faith, So I think it could be more attractive to people if they could like change how they pray, kind of don't get into the rosary right away. Just kind of hold the rosary in your hand before you pray and just think about your day, think about what you're grateful for, think about your goals for the future, what you want to do. Because, I feel like everyone kind of knows, like it's, God's giving us all these, hints and little things in our mind of like what we should be doing, it's like, people say it's like your subconscious mind kind of telling us like what we need to do and everything. But just just think about your day and be grateful for it, and pray with the intentions of you receiving it. And I think that can make the rosary more attractive, and actually even more beneficial. Like if you pray for the souls in purgatory, picture them rising up to heaven because of your prayers, and get happy because of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you just say, God, please rise up the souls in purgatory, save them, what is that doing? You're just kind of saying words. But as you pray that, think of them like, whether it's chains breaking, or just have some kind of thought, whatever you perceive of them rising up to heaven, them not suffering anymore. Just have that thought in your head as you pray for those souls. And to me, that's been so much more effective and powerful. And that's changed from it being, it's a chore, I have to pray for these souls in purgatory, to like, oh no, I want that. I want to see them. I see that these souls are moving up to heaven because of my prayers.
That's awesome. I think what you're touching on is obviously like intentionality and imagery as well. And it speaks obviously to what you're doing with the brand, because imagery is so powerful, and we're in an age where the youth are drawn to, at its core, is probably just aesthetics. They're drawn to what looks good, what sounds good, and all that kind of stuff. And and so that's the way that I think through the brand, through World Play's Instagram account, that's the way we kind of have to now appeal to people, is like aesthetically portraying the truth, So they're drawn at first to sort of the outside surface, but then once they dive into it, and they can be sort of, break the chains of whatever has been limiting their mind, you know what I mean? Whatever has been imprisoning themselves. And so as we kind of keep talking about the youth, and obviously you being a youth leader, and a big reason why I think what we're doing, right, is for the youth and for our younger selves. We talked a little bit before, and you're pretty passionate about directing them to the youth, and you said how much the saints you saw, eyes light up and things like that. I guess my question would be sort of, what do you think that the youth sort of needs, right now? And this is like objectively speaking. I mean, it could be, the youth in the parish, or in your particular parish, or, youth as a whole, and sort of like what we can do to help fulfill that. Maybe we as a church, like how do we help fulfill that need?
Yeah. First of all, I think the youth needs very close connections with their priests at the church. I think that's what it comes down to, kind of like being the father of all the kids in that church, a good fatherly figure. So I think a lot of our youth kind of move away from the faith quicker than they should, because they don't have that personal relationship with their priest. Their priest isn't constantly, creating these youth groups in their churches. Like a lot of churches don't even have a youth group, which I think is honestly pretty sad. I think it's kind of an obligation for the priests in a parish to set up some kind of way to get the youth together, and whether it's he can even if he's busy, he can just get volunteers and tell those people to do it. Priests always have access to probably like teenagers, kind of people in their 20s, to be able to do that. So I've seen that really hurts the youth when kind of like, even down to the leaders, when leaders don't engage as much with the kids and aren't a good role model to the kids. I think that's kind of the number one thing. It kind of has to, to attack the whole youth as a whole. It really comes down to these small parishes doing their jobs, and then it's slowly expanding from there. And then all of a sudden, like, the youth loves the church. And in terms of, but then comes the question, like, some youth don't go to church, some youth don't engage in that. And then I think that's where it comes to, brands like ours, where we have to make the faith attractive to them, because because it's so easy for them to have fun and be distracted by other things, because other things are so much more appealing to the faith. Kind of like how you were saying, you see these crazy shirts with, Kobe's, and all these people on them. They're doing their job, they're even getting all these like vintage athletes and they're making them modern again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is kind of something, in our church, it stays on tradition, which is beautiful, but it also kind of hurts us in a way because, if you do something kind of unconventional, you might get attacked. It might be blasphemous and stuff. People like, I've gotten that some with my shirts, they didn't completely understand the design and kind of my message behind it. I've gotten that with the Padre Pio one where he's, I put him in boxing gloves, but then it's kind of like when you ask those questions is when it's like, oh, okay, maybe I see what you're doing here. Like it is still, there's still so much merit and such a beautiful story in that design. And it's just kind of stepping away from the traditional aspect. So I really think it comes down to just kind of priests in their parishes just double downing on making sure the youth come, and kind of also the job as Catholics to attract the youth in whatever way possible that's still in line with the faith,
Yeah, I agree. I think I had on my friend Jake, who's a focused missionary, and I was kind of talking to him about like, how do you, when we just got out of college and now you're a focused missionary on college, and now we see that, I see somebody who's going to want to get me to do something I don't want to do, right? Like how do you even start to sort of evangelize, quote unquote? And like what he was talking about was really just building a relationship. And I think relationship building is what we're really in the business of doing, as Catholics and like as witnesses, because that to me is the most important thing. I think when you're trying to talk to, it's like, you can't do much. You're just holding up a sign. There's times to hold up signs, right? There's times to let your opinions or the truths of the Catholic Church be sort of known, and especially when, they're getting attacked. But I think most of the time, 99% of the time in our everyday life, it's really about building relationships. If you don't have that, then there's really nothing, you're not going to, if you leave the church without any relationships built, then you're not really leaving anything in terms of like interiorly, like there's nothing that's really holding me back. But when you have those strong relationships, especially with their priests, and then there's that like conscience and sort of like soul that's kind of like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Should I be doing it? And not to shout out Father Peter again, but Father Peter is probably my first priest friend, and that really helped me a lot, and it kind of transformed the way I sort of even just saw clergy, and especially today, it's really hard to see not be suspicious, I guess, sometimes, whether it's like, hey, I don't really know what you're teaching. You could be teaching some heretical things, or the scandal could pop up in our mind. Like, you're just always sort of on edge. And when you can have a priest friend that you do sort of relate to and trust and bond with, I mean, it can be a really awesome thing. And obviously that's not even including like spiritual direction and all that other stuff. So yeah, I completely agree. And another thing that we were talking about is sort of like the youth living up to their potential, right? And now is like, I just had this conversation a little bit on our last podcast with Joe Gallagher, who works for Church Militant. And I was kind of talking about how, the reason, that's literally the reason why Jordan Peterson and then now Andrew Tate are so massive, is because what they're trying to say is like, live up to your potential at its core of like, what happens when you make your bed? You're just gaining discipline. So what happens when now you take that discipline to other aspects of your life? He's just simplifying it in a certain way. And obviously he has a way of putting it over your head as well, because he's so smart. And then what Andrew Tate's kind of saying sometimes, half the time, is like essentially the same thing, like take responsibility for your life. You can do something with it. You don't have to be like just looking at James Charles makeup videos as a guy and being like, what the hell is going on? Like, you can be a man again, And so those two are massive. And then you talked about, and obviously as a youth leader, this idea of like bringing, revealing that the youth have more to live for, right? And so it's like, it's not really a question. I just want to give you the opportunity to like, what is that like? Like, how do you share that message of like, hey, you're talking to me at 16, like, tell me, what is this potential? What is this potential that I can live up to?
Yeah. I think, like Peterson and Tate both had, a good point in what they were saying on how strong of a human being, God made us and our capabilities. A lot of people think, they'll be like, oh, that guy, like, they say these people are just like arrogant, and they just materialistic and all that, which, I don't want to say anything on, but, I've also noticed a thing with our youth is that they are, not confident in their abilities and their potential, and I've noticed even in our older generation where you have people are just so content with their jobs, and they're like, oh, it's kind of like they have a false humility. They're like, oh no, I'm humble and I'm thankful, like, like God gave me this job, so I'm gonna just be thankful for it, and that's all I'm gonna do. However, I really believe that's kind of, a false humility. I think true humility is knowing what God gave you and what you're capable of, and doing everything you can to fulfill whatever you need to. Like, did Jesus, preach to 3 people and say, okay, I'm done. Like, I'll call it a day. I'm grateful for these 3 people for coming to the faith, and now I'm done with my job. No, he never took a break. He knew his capabilities, and he knew he knew what God gave him. And I think a lot of people have that false humility of just, I'm gonna just be grateful for this, but really God gave us so much. Like, he gave us so much intelligence, and like infinite intelligence basically, and a mind that it can be so creative. And God wants us to use our capabilities. He doesn't want us to settle. He doesn't want us to, he wants us to use our capabilities for, for the greater good, for saving souls. And I would tell that kid, just, you just gotta kind of give them confidence and let them know where they're doing wrong. It could be different for any kid, but just reassure, get that kid to pray, get that kid to know that, they are capable of doing what the most successful people in the world have done.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's so much, and what men I think want to hear, young men want to hear, and I think individuals is like they want to feel purpose in like in anything, and they want to identify with something, and I think that's why you have people who identify with astrological signs, or they identify with BLM movement, or you identify with this movement or that movement or whatever. You want to identify with something, and inherently that gives you a purpose, and so if we can obviously share and get people to identify with as a child of God, as God's creation, as in His image, then you find your purpose, right? So like that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And as we sort of kind of continue and talk about using gifts, obviously I know that you have some other projects, so I at least wanted to give you a little bit of time to share with some other projects. I saw that you made an app and some other stuff. I know that you're a busy guy. So what are some other ways that you're using your gifts?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I still have an app online you could download now. It's called Cactus in Space. I mean, I am I am in some other businesses online as well, just honestly completely like unrelated to the faith. Um, I was actually in kind of like, this was also kind of a jump start in why I wanted to do so good with a brand. Because I'm in another business that's in the alcohol industry, honestly.
Mm.
And and during COVID, I would get these calls of people, wondering where their alcohol is, and all of that. And I felt such a pain, like literally, like in my heart. I'm like, why am I even like affiliated with this? Like, why am I even doing this? You know, and I needed like, my partners would tell me, oh, if they didn't buy it from you, they just buy it from someone else. But still, it was very unfulfilling to me. So literally, I took a whole like 180-degree turn. I'm like, there's no point in this. There's no point in like in a monetary gain, honestly, when you're really destroying another person's life. So I really wanted to start something that can literally save souls and get people to heaven, and kind of use my will. I believe this is the will God has for me, to its fullest potential. So that was kind of another thing I have had going on, and yeah, man.
Yeah. So I wish I would have asked this question earlier though, because I saw that you guys have been at a few at Saints Reserve has been at a few like markets and stuff like that. Now, are these? I'm assuming these aren't all just like Catholic markets, right? There's like brand pop ups or.
Oh yeah, no, I used to just run like the farmers market in like downtown San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a blessing. So I'd run those every weekend. It's like Saturday and Sunday, and you get all these people. It's also crazy how well saints are known in modern society. Like it's actually it's a blessing. Actually, you could show anyone that picture of a guy holding the flaming sword on top of a demon, and they're like, "Oh, that's Saint Michael," And I got that so much, and so I didn't notice when I first started running markets in like downtown San Diego. I was kind of skeptical. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get people like heckling at me. I give rosaries out with every order, so like they have all these rosaries on my table. People are gonna like not love this stuff, but it was such a blessing to see whether they were Catholic or not, whether they understood it or not. They would say, "Wow, that's a dope design. I'm gonna get that shirt." And then in the bag I slide in like a rosary, a guide on how to pray the rosary, and then I'm like, "Oh, cool. I'll just like put this in my car on the mirror." I'm like, "Okay, even that is something. That's beautiful in itself." So, no, running these markets has been such a blessing. It's really shown me that, there is a market for this. It's not, I try to design what I do, like not like so crazy in your face Catholic, like it doesn't, it's something that people could ask questions about and could kind of, like relate to. What also made me start this brand, I'd see all these like very just simple and not much effort designs of saints, of just like line drawings of and then it would say something like like a Hail Mary over the front of the shirt and all that, and I just thought like our youth wouldn't wear that, like with all due respect, like I love that, it's beautiful things, but when it's too much in your face, kind of these youth kind of get kind of like ashamed to wear it. In all honesty, so it's kind of nice. I'd run these markets and get attention from all aspects of people, which was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I was really curious about sort of the reaction you got, because I thought similar things about like, okay, if I were to go and do some sort of like pop up style, how that would go, and I don't know. I think it all depends on. I think it depends on the person, right? When they meet you, they meet an individual, and then they could. I think a lot of times, like we forget, like the person of the brand is, if not just as important or more important than almost what they're selling. Because if I can buy into you, then I want to support you, as a person. And so that's a massive thing too, building relationships and just the way that you act. And if they can see the joy of you, then it's kind of hard to be mad at it. Although, you're going to get your crazy individuals that will find something to be mad about regardless.
Yeah, I still have those talks about, people talking about aliens and how, they're just, Jesus was like an extraterrestrial human being that got dropped off here. I used to, of course, get those conversations.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of those interesting things for people to put input, but at the very least, like you being the heart of, of downtown San Diego, or any, all of us being in our own places, like you are being a witness and just, in that of itself, it's way more than just putting something up on your story or whatever. Like that in itself, using your gifts to just go into the world, that's exactly what we're called to do. But yeah, I think I have basically asked all the questions. I've enjoyed the conversation a lot. Is there you want to at least share with anybody else? Well, anything else? You have any last thoughts or, advice, or just where people can find you and, support the brand or next collection or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, I have my Instagram page, Saints Reserve, and I just kind of want to end on a note where just start praying the rosary. I don't know, it sounds very cliche, but even if you're lost, even if you don't understand it, in the beginning, or just have faith that it's going to change your life, and it's going to make you a better person, and it's going to get you closer to God, and get you to ultimately hopefully get you to heaven. There are beautiful promises of the rosary. You gain there's so many merits just to praying it. And I just want to tell people that don't be discouraged to not pray it, to pray it when it gets a little boring, or when you think you're getting nothing out of it. Think of it like any other task you do. You're not going to get super good at it, or you're not going to see any results from it if you just pray it for for a week. Honestly, just pray the rosary, and it helps you kind of see God's will that you have for your life. You can't go wrong, honestly. 15-20 minutes a day, even if you use it as a time to reflect and de-stress, just because sometimes I have to tell people this, because they need something, especially people that, lack so much faith and don't understand the point of it. They kind of need something else to motivate them to pray the rosary, especially the youth. So say, just pray it. Just use it as a way to de-stress problem. Just pray the rosary. So don't think about this problem anymore. You kind of have to make it an excuse for people to start praying it in a way, but not in a bad way, in a fully intentional way. And I truly believe that people that pray it consistently, it'll lead them to loving it and understanding it, and don't kind of get discouraged if it's not like that from the start.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the best way to end off. And, I think the viewers, even just listening, if you're just listening to the podcast, you can see sort of how, I think, joyful you are and how excited you are about what you're doing. And, as you said, that's due to the rosary. And, I'll say, even for those people who maybe don't know how to pray the rosary, what you can do is go ahead and buy a t-shirt or a sweater from Saints Reserve, and he'll send you one, and he'll even send you something on how to pray it. So that's 2 for 1 right there, if you just go and support my guy here. But with that, like I said, guys, I'll leave everything in the description. I'll be showing pictures of everything. And we got to not only support each other, obviously, physically, but prayerfully supporting each other. And I just want to be able to give my small platform to show that, all of us, man, whatever gifts we have, we can all contribute to the kingdom. And we're all witnesses, in our day-to-day life, we're all witnesses. So with that, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening. Go check out Saints Reserve. And until next time, guys, God's peace.